Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be looking through and reading some parts of this book about Switzerland. Let's just dive right in. Switzerland. My usual recording light died, ? So I'm not still sure what happened, but I'm using my ring light that casts this weird glare, so the lighting might be a little different because I'm trying not to blind you with the glare on the book. So anyway, sorry about the wobbles as well. We're going to start with this section here. Switzerland today. Are the Swiss the happiest people on earth? You might not think such a thing could be measured, since there are happy people and miserable people everywhere. However, yes, it is possible to determine the relative happiness of a people according to nationality. And yes, the Swiss stand blissfully at the very top of the world in terms of life satisfaction. That is one of the 11 categories in the 2015 Better Life Index, a scorecard of 34 nations' well-being published by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. The other 10 categories are housing, income, jobs, community, education, environment, civic engagement, health, safety, and work-life balance. When all 11 factors are weighted evenly, Switzerland comes out sixth. It gets pulled out of top place by its very low score in the civic engagement category. There, it falls into the bottom 20% of the OECD's nations. That anomaly makes sense, however, when you understand Switzerland's special political and governmental organization, which is unlike any other on Earth. The OECD index is only one measure of a country's standing. There are others, and Switzerland comes out among the top few in all of them. In the 2014 Legantum Prosperity Index, which ranks 142 countries according to wealth, economic growth, and quality of life, Switzerland is number 2 after Norway. In the 2013 World Happiness Report, published by the United Nations' Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Switzerland snagged the number 3 spot after Denmark and Norway. According to the World Economic Forum's 2013 Human Capital Report, Switzerland invests more in the health, education, and talent of its people than any other country in the world. None of this is to say that Switzerland has no problems. Of course it does. But in the global scheme of things, this small but mightily important country is doing very well indeed. Switzerland is a country in Western Europe that breaks rules and turns many assumptions upside down. It is a landlocked nation, it has no seacoast, but yet it has plentiful water resources. Within its relatively small area, its people speak 4 national languages, none of which are English, and 3 of those are official languages. There is no one tongue that all Swiss speak, and the country's cultural and linguistic populations are clustered in separate regions. That alone would seem to indicate a lack of cohesiveness leading to national insecurity. And yet the country is quite solid and has been for a long time. It is a progressive, forward-looking, fair-minded country, and yet Swiss women didn't have full suffrage, the right to vote, in all regions until 1990. Switzerland is largely mountainous, secluded, and lacks natural resources, and yet its economy is strong. It's a major player on the international marketplace. Switzerland values its neutrality, yet has a high-tech, highly armed citizen army to which all male citizens are drafted. Its industries range from technology to textiles to tourism. Its weather ranges from areas of year-long snow to Mediterranean heat. Significantly, Switzerland is in the very heart of Europe, but refuses to join the European Union. The Swiss are famously independent, as evidenced by their historic neutrality. They have so far resisted joining the EU, even as that decision threatens to hurt their economy and relations with the rest of Europe. Not least, Switzerland is a land of spectacular natural beauty, which attracts high numbers of tourists. Many people have an image of Switzerland as charming and quaint. They imagine pastoral scenes of simple people living the good life against backdrops of breathtaking mountain scenery. That good Swiss life in this fantasy involves happy people living in pretty chalets, wearing colorfully embroidered peasant clothing, yodeling into the Alpine distances, making cheese and chocolate, eating fondue, and crafting world-class watches while adorable cuckoo clocks announce the time. That sounds so pleasant. This vision of Switzerland is true in its parts, but it's hardly the full picture. Consider a similar fantasy of the United States in which everyone is a movie star or rock star, plays baseball or football, eats hamburgers and mom's apple pie, and wears cowboy hats and boots. On any given detail, the stereotype says American, but as a generalization, it's flat, one-dimensional, misleading, and a bit dated. So it is with the Swiss stereotype. Switzerland is a very advanced 21st century country full of complexity and contradictions. It's a wealthy country and obviously a very successful one on many levels. All of that counts for a lot because Switzerland today is undergoing changes. The Swiss in general do not like change. The Swiss are often described as somewhat bland, conservative people. They like the way things are in their country. Who would blame them? And don't see any need to change. A vivid example of this attitude can be seen in its recent move to limit immigration. Switzerland hosts an unusually large number of foreigners. In 2015, foreign nationals made up 23.5% of the population, with about 80,000 people immigrating each year. Another 230,000 cross the border daily for work. The Swiss need highly qualified people in their chemical, pharmaceutical, and biotech industries to help keep those businesses globally competitive. However, in 2014, the right-wing Swiss People's Party proposed an initiative aimed at limiting immigration through quotas. It passed by a slender majority of 50.3% of the vote. Some people believe the vote was prompted by a fear of Muslim immigrants, particularly those who hold fundamentalist beliefs. Muslims make up about 5% of Switzerland's 8 million people. The Constitution upholds freedom of religion, but the voters' concerns seem to have more to do with Islam's potential impact on the Swiss way of life. One immigrant group in Bern, for example, in 2011, reportedly called for the White Cross to be removed from the Swiss flag. The group suggested replacing it with a secular icon that doesn't favor or offend any religion, and which more accurately reflects Switzerland's multicultural reality. Following the 2015 attack on a Parisian magazine staff by Islamist terrorists, Swiss calls to curb Muslim immigration only rose higher. While Switzerland grapples with its vision for its future, it is also being forced to confront some dark realities from its past. Its neutral role in World War II, I hate R's and W's together. Its neutral role in World War II is being reevaluated. Many Swiss fervently believe that their spirited defense is what kept Nazi Germany from invading their small country, while Germany conquered much larger nations around it. Historical perspective suggests otherwise, and Switzerland today is compelled to confront some uncomfortable truths. This topic is discussed in more detail in this book. I'll get into it later. Similarly, the country is being forced to change its nearly century-old tradition of bank secrecy. Switzerland is a giant in the international banking industry and built its reputation on complete privacy for its clients. Tax evaders and other criminals found this practice very helpful, and as a result, hid ill-begotten fortunes in Swiss banks. Now, under pressure from the United States and the EU, the Swiss are being compelled to change their laws to conform to certain standards of transparency. This move will no doubt have a huge impact on their economy. Switzerland today must decide where it fits in Europe and in the world. The Swiss treasure their independent, isolationist, special status, but they also know they need to be part of the world beyond their mountain fortress. What does it mean to be Swiss in the 21st century? We know it's not a matter of yodeling and cuckoo clocks. The Swiss will decide the answers to these questions, and indications look very promising that they will find the right answers for their country's future. Welcome to Switzerland. Alright, let's look at some pictures and read some boxes. Here's the iconic Matterhorn mountain, this beautiful picturesque area. We've got a beautiful meadow here full of little flowers and big beautiful mountains in the background. Let's read about some of those mountains. Great walls of snow. When big masses of snow have their foundations loosened by rain or melted by warm winds, they roll down mountainsides. These incidents are known as avalanches. Tremors caused by loud noises also can cause avalanches. Avalanches are most likely to occur when the gradient or slope of the mountainside is more than 22 degrees. An avalanche can reach speeds of up to 245 miles per hour. The air pushed along in front of the avalanche can cause as much damage as the avalanche itself, which may destroy buildings or even bury towns. Due to the size of an avalanche and the speed at which it travels, it is impossible to stop or alter its course. Every year brings tragedies in the mountains. On January 31st, 2015, 8 people died in 4 separate avalanches in one day in Switzerland. Then, 3 weeks later, another 3 were killed and 2 more were injured while skiing in an area called Death Valley in the Swiss Alps. Those incidents raised the death toll from avalanches in the Swiss Alps that winter to 24. The Swiss Institute for Snow and Avalanche Research conducts studies and gives warnings about avalanches. Since World War II, the organization has produced reports on snow conditions during the winter months to warn snow skiers and mountain climbers of possible avalanches. The Institute uses a 5-level warning system to rate snow conditions and the possibility of avalanches from low to very high. In addition, Switzerland has terrestrial and air mountain rescue teams that are on call 24 hours a day. Many artificial structures have also been built along the most susceptible stretches of roads and around Alpine villages to hold back the snowslides. We've got a glacier area over here, and here are the Jura Mountains in the north. Beautiful Lake Geneva. Zurich with the Lamont River flowing through it, and here is Bern and a sweet chamois. Very cute. Here's a very old castle. It says it's a museum now. It's the Chateau d'Aigle. There's Julius Caesar encountering a Gaelic king there, leader of the Helvetians that lived in the area. Let's read about the early Christians. One of the first groups of Christians to arrive in Switzerland was a band of Irish monks led by Columban in 610 CE. An early chronicle described the monks as long-haired and tattooed, carrying stout sticks and a spare pair of boots around their necks. They traveled around Switzerland throwing carved images of gods into the rivers and causing havoc among the population, who resented their high-handed attempts to Christianize them. Driven out of the lakeside village of Tugen, the monks moved into Brigantium, which is modern Bregenz, and began to smash heathen gods. Again ordered out of the area, the monks moved into Italy, leaving behind one of their number, Gaul, who was too sick to make the journey. In 612 CE, Gaul founded a monastery on the site of the present-day St. Gallen. Pretty cool. And let's read about William Tell. Right there. No one can quite decide whether the story of William Tell is Swiss history or Swiss myth. Perhaps it's best described as a legend, in that it might have its roots in history, but over time has taken on mythic qualities. Whichever it is, it's a good tale and is as much a part of the character of Switzerland as cheese or cuckoo clocks. William Tell's story begins during Emperor Rudolph's reign. Tell's canton was governed by the ruthless Habsburg supervisor Gessler, who, the story goes, put his hat on a pole in the town center and made everybody who passed that spot bow to it. He also confiscated land from the Swiss, robbing them of huge sources of income in rents and tithes, and insulted them. When Tell refused to bow to the hat, a series of insults passed between the two men. Gessler told Tell to shoot an apple off his son's head. Tell, who was known for his excellent aim, knocked the apple off with no injury to his child. He told Gessler, however, that had the boy died, Tell's second arrow would have been for him. Infuriated, Gessler had Tell arrested. En route to jail, Tell escaped and killed Gessler. That sparked a rebellion which led to the birth of Swiss Confederation. Tell became a national hero and a symbol of freedom. The story inspired many works of art, among them the opera William Tell by Gioacchino Rossini, best known for its famous overture. Here's Zwingli, leader of the Protestant Reformation in Switzerland. And there's John Calvin, who also kind of did his thing during the Protestant Reformation in Switzerland. Let's read a darker view of Swiss neutrality. Switzerland's neutrality would have meant nothing if Germany or some other aggressor had decided to invade. In fact, there is evidence that Adolf Hitler had such a plan, but never acted on it. That fact raises the question, did Switzerland make itself sufficiently useful to Germany in some other way? The shining image of neutral Switzerland as the safe haven in the sea of World War II's horror and chaos has been tarnished by the answer to that question. Recent revelations about Switzerland's wartime transactions with Germany more than suggest its culpability. The country served as a convenient place to hide Jewish assets stolen by the Nazis. Gold, diamonds, cash, artworks, and other valuables were stashed in Swiss bank accounts and safe deposit boxes. The plunder even included gold dental fillings extracted from corpses. At the end of the war, Switzerland resisted Allied demands to return the funds to their rightful owners. The country finally agreed to return a mere 12% of the stolen gold. For the most part, Holocaust survivors or their families were unable to reclaim their property from Swiss banking officials who imposed impenetrable bureaucratic barriers. Meanwhile, many European Jews had also transferred their assets to Swiss banks, thinking it would be safe there until after the war. The Swiss were happy to accept Jewish money, but not as willing to accept the Jews themselves. Jewish refugees fleeing the Holocaust were routinely and vigorously denied admission to Switzerland. Many would go on to die instead in German concentration camps. Today, Switzerland is being forced to face its dark history. Evidence shows that the Swiss profited greatly from both the victims of the Holocaust and their executioners, a neutrality that was far from benign. In 1995, when Swiss federal president Caspar Villiger said, "We bear a considerable burden of guilt for the treatment of Jews in our country," it was the first admission by a Swiss government leader of any wrongdoing during those war years. We see some Swiss francs being traded out for euros. Oh, pretty. Federal Palace in Bern. Bern being the administrative capital of Switzerland, although Switzerland does not have an official capital city. But all the government stuff happens in Bern. Let's see, the Swiss Federal Council 2015 there. And let's read about democracy, direct or representative. Most of the world's democracies, including the United States, have a representative form of government. There we go. That is, the people vote for officials to act for them in the running of the country. In the United States, citizens vote for senators and Congress members to formulate government policy. In this form of government, majority opinion may dominate, but minority factions are usually ensured some form of representation. In a direct or pure democracy, on the other hand, the people themselves determine policy. Typically, they do this through a direct form of voting called a referendum, or through some other way of coming to consensus. This form of democracy gives citizens more power and is based on the rule of the majority. It has few or no provisions for minority voices. In Switzerland, it's a bit more complicated. Citizens do elect representatives, but also have the means to vote directly. Referenda are held on the most important issues. All men, and since 1971, women, age 18 and above, have the right to vote. At the federal level, the right of initiative enables any citizen to propose a change to the Constitution. If 100,000 electors sign a proposed constitutional change, the federal government can make a counter-proposal and a popular vote is taken on the issue. The citizens also have a right to demand a referendum on any new piece of legislation. If 50,000 electors or 8 cantons demand a referendum within 100 days of a new piece of legislation being published, the referendum will be held. If the voters decide against it, the legislation is dropped or altered. Very complicated. Let's see. Here's an outdoor assembly, old-fashioned way of voting where everyone just shows up and raises their hands. Let's see, political parties. A two-party political system, such as is found in the United States, does not exist in Switzerland. As a matter of custom, each party is represented on the Federal Council, so no one political group can really dominate or determine policy. There are different parties represented in the National Council, ranging from the 4 main parties, the Christian Democrats, or the centrists, the Radical Party, or the center-rights, the Social Democrats, or the left-wingers, and the Swiss People's Party, or the conservative right-wingers, to environmentalist groups and independents. The fact that the parties are able to cooperate so easily in government shows that they have very few major differences. In recent years, the conservative Swiss People's Party has become the strongest political party in Switzerland. In addition to this type of political grouping, the system allows for pressure groups to form. Because of the citizens' rights to call for a referendum on national issues, groups form continuously in order to force discussion on certain topics. Conservationists, the anti-nuclear lobby, anti-fascist groups, and anti-abortion groups have all used their rights to call for a referendum on the issues they think are important. And here is the UN building in Geneva. Some Swiss clockmaking or watchmaking, most likely. Here's some sweet cows. Herder right there. And there's the Matterhorn Mountain and a little choo-choo train going right by. Watchmaking. French refugees of the 16th century first brought skills to Switzerland that made possible the development of the watch industry. The first watchmakers' guild in Switzerland was established in the 17th century in Geneva. From there, the industry spread out along the Jura Mountains to Schaffhausen. Mass production of tiny parts began in Switzerland in 1845, long before their countries had the technology. So Switzerland gained an enormous advantage over other watchmaking areas. In 1921, the Swiss Laboratory of Horological Research was set up so Swiss manufacturers could pool ideas. In 1967, the first quartz watch was manufactured in Switzerland. Liquid crystal displays, or LCDs, electrochromic displays, combined analog and digital displays, and optic sensors were all developed in Switzerland. Every year, 90% of the watch industry's production is exported all over the world, generating an average annual revenue of 21 billion Swiss francs, or 21.7 billion US dollars. Overall, Switzerland exported 28.6 million watches in 2014, about 500,000 more than in 2013. More than half of those went to Asia, 31% to Europe, and 14% to the United States. However, with China exporting more than 600 million watches a year, Switzerland is stressing the quality of its brand. The average Swiss-made watch cost around $700, or 676 francs, and the average Chinese watch costs about $2 US. With such a price difference, the Swiss are mainly in the luxury market, which they dominate. And some beautiful textiles here. That's really lovely. Ooh, the Swiss Army knife. A tool for all reasons. Iconic, right? Everyone knows about the Swiss Army watch. In 1884, Karl Elsner opened a surgical equipment shop in Ebach, Schweiz, and was soon commissioned to produce a new pocket knife for the Swiss Army. The army needed a simple folding knife that could be used both to open canned food and to assemble and disassemble the Swiss service rifle. At the time, that process required a screwdriver. The first such knives had been produced by a German manufacturer and consisted of a single blade, a reamer, a can opener, and a screwdriver. Its handle was black. When Elsner took over production of the knife in 1891, he improved upon its design. He created a way for the tools to be attached on both sides of the handle using a spring mechanism. This innovation allowed him to use the same spring to hold all the tools in place, and he was able to put twice as many features on the knife. He also made the handle red, so it would stand out in the snow. Since then, the Swiss Army knife has become popular around the world and beyond. A knife went into space with the crew of the space shuttle, and an oversized copy is on display in New York's Museum of Modern Art. Infinitely practical and beautifully designed, it is an icon of Switzerland itself. The knives are now produced by two Swiss companies, Victorinox and Wegener. Each knife features the Swiss flag cross logo and the national coat of arms. The knives also come with a wide range of tools, including various screwdrivers, corkscrew and bottle openers, key ring, tweezers, toothpick, scissors, multi-purpose hook, wrench, wood saw, fish scaler, ruler, orange peeler, chisel, magnifying lens, pliers, pressurized ballpoint pen, nail clippers, window breaker, seat belt cutter, laser pointer, USB flash drive, MP3 player, fingerprint scanner with built-in data encryption, and many other of life's little necessities. It's so cool. Swiss bank secrecy. Switzerland built its reputation with a 1934 law making it a crime for banks to reveal a client's identity. Internationally or not, Swiss banks became a safe haven for the interests of a wide variety of criminals. Organized crime, tax cheats, money launderers, terrorist organizations, and international tyrants and thugs of all stripes have been suspected of hiding their ill-begotten assets behind the respectable but impermeable facade of the Swiss banks. Most notoriously, the banks are accused of aiding the Nazis and benefiting from the victims of World War II. Switzerland claimed neutrality during World War II, and therefore thousands of people, including many Jews, deposited their money in Switzerland. When the depositors died, most of them at the hands of the Nazis, their relatives were often denied any access to their funds that the banks continued to make interest off. The banks are also said to have funneled hundreds of millions into Nazi Germany, perhaps in return for not being invaded by it. Today, things are changing. In 2013, Swiss President Uli Maurer defended banking secrecy, saying it is comparable to medical confidentiality. The state must absolutely respect the private sphere, he said, and should not know that there is in your bank account. Should not know what there is in your bank account. Gotcha. Nevertheless, pressure from the United States and the European Union has persuaded the Swiss to align its bank practices with those of other countries. Let's see, how beautiful. Gorgeous landscape there. Lots of traffic as well. Lots of commuters. A bridge to a glacier. Just a few years ago, hikers climbing the Trift Glacier in the Western Alps could reach the Trift Hut on foot. The hut is run by the Swiss Alpine Club. By 2004, however, the glacier had receded to the point where that was no longer possible. To make the climb accessible again, a pedestrian suspension bridge was built across a deep canyon in 2005. The bridge itself became a tourist attraction, and it was replaced in 2009 with a more permanent structure. Look at that. Oof. Even getting to the bridge is an adventure. First, a 1.5-mile-long gondola ride takes people to the remote reaches of the Trift Gorge. From there, a 90-minute walk on a mountain trail leads to the bridge. The 558-foot Trift Bridge is not for the timid. It hangs 328 feet above Trift Sea or Trift Lake, and the views are breathtaking. The lake itself is new, having been formed by the melting glacier after 2002. Yeah, I would never. I would do it, but I would cry the whole time. Here's a sweet old man here. The little Alpine hat. Oh, how lovely. A little outdoor cafe here. Very European. We've got a guy hiking here, having a great time. Let's read about some great Swiss thinkers. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are indeed greater slaves than they. A quote from Jean-Jacques Rousseau in The Social Contract in 1762. Switzerland has produced a large number of people who have made important contributions in the arts and sciences. These include mathematicians, scientists, philosophers, and psychologists. Here are a few of the best-known Swiss personalities. For mathematicians, we have Leonhard Euler, Daniel Bernoulli, and Paul Bernays. For psychologists, we have Hermann Rorschach, Carl Gustav Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, Jean Piaget, a pioneer in developmental studies, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a pioneer in near-death studies. Literally, if you, I have my degree in psychology, right? You have to hear about these four people, especially Jung and Piaget, because I took developmental psychology, so I had a whole class on Piaget. Philosophers include Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Denis de Rougemont. Economists include Leon Walras, J.C.L. Simond de Sismondi. It's a fancy name. Other scientists include Ferdinand de Saussure, a linguist, Auguste Piccard, physicist, Jacques Piccard, an oceanographer, Bertrand Piccard, psychiatrist and balloonist, Claude Nicollier, an astronaut who flew on 4 space shuttle missions. And for humanities, we have Henri Dunant, the founder of the Red Cross. I think it's going to talk about him later in this book. This page talks about folk costumes. There are almost as many different traditional costumes in Switzerland as there are valleys. These costumes, highly regarded and valued, are worn during the many festive occasions in Switzerland. Many costumes display the Swiss craft of embroidery. The most distinctive ones are probably those of the Gruyere region. The Armailli, or herdsman of the Gruyere, wears the bretson, a short blue cloth or canvas jacket with sleeves gathered at the shoulders and edelweiss embroidered on the lapels. The women's dress from the same region is plain and worn with a red scarf round the neck. For festivals, a silk apron and a long-sleeved jacket are added. The straw hat is edged with velvet and has crocheted ribbons hanging off it. Women from St. Gall wear shimmering gold lace caps, while women from Appenzell wear lace caps with spreading wings, you can see here. Very interesting. The Appenzell herdsman wears intricate trousers with heavily patterned straps and suspenders carrying pictures of the cows he tends. That's adorable. He also wears a silver earring on his right ear. In Nidwalden and Obwalden, the women's dress is ornamented with silver, and a silver comb is worn in the side of the hair. The man's shirt from the same region is heavily embroidered. Lots of embroidery in this country. Very cool. Reading the newspaper, drinking some coffee, looks like. Let's see. Nice little day out in the town. You can see the Swiss flag right here, one of the few square flags in the world. Here's a kid with a kid. Let's see, Ruth Dreyfus, a politician. And we're working hard in school, doing some studying. Now let's read about the Red Cross. Jean-Henri Dunant had no intention of being a world benefactor. He was as interested as any other Swiss in setting up a business for himself, and to that end, he went to Algeria, where he began to trade in grain. But things went wrong. The money he borrowed in Switzerland to start his operation could not be repaid, and so he decided to enlist help from Napoleon III. He followed Napoleon to the Battle of Solferino in northern Italy, where he accidentally witnessed the terrible casualties that the battle caused. He spent 2 days personally helping the injured and then returned to Switzerland with a lot more on his mind than grain. In 1862, Dunant toured Switzerland and wrote an account of what he had witnessed. He proposed that armies of all nations should have trained non-combatant volunteers to provide help to the wounded on both sides of any battle. He also suggested the need for international treaties to guarantee the protection of the combatants. His actions brought about the signing of the First Geneva Convention. In 1863, the Red Cross was formed in Geneva under the leadership of Gustave Moynier, who eventually forced Dunant out of the organization. Being more of an idealist than a businessman, Dunant found himself bankrupt and went into hiding to escape his creditors. He lived in poverty in various cities and villages and was mostly forgotten. He got his reward, however, when he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1901, the very first one. Today, there are Red Cross and Red Crescent societies in almost every country, with more than 90 million members, volunteers, and staff. The headquarters of the International Red Cross is located in Geneva and is staffed by Swiss citizens. Switzerland is the guardian of the 4 Geneva Conventions regarding prisoners of war, the wounded, and refugees. There's a pretty cool photo here of a soldier in front of the Swiss flag. A very beautiful old church here. It's lovely. And there's a priest here doing his thing. Let's read about Einsiedeln Abbey. This Benedictine abbey in northeastern Switzerland was founded in 934 on the site of the hermitage of Saint Meinrad. Huldrych Zwingli, the religious reformer, was the parish priest from 1516 to 1518. The abbots of the monastery were very powerful. Even when they had lost most of their power after 1789, the abbey remained a major place of pilgrimage for Europeans who visited the Black Madonna statue. I have no idea what that sound was outside. Okay. The abbey also has a library containing rare and beautiful manuscripts. To house all the pilgrims, a Baroque-style church was built in the 18th century. The buildings and grounds of the church and abbey are very beautiful and remain a major tourist attraction. It looks lovely. Let's see. Oh, these are people enjoying the fact that Pope John Paul II was visiting Bern in 2004. That's exciting. Looks like they're waving their hands back and forth. That's pretty cool. And here's an Easter parade, Passion Play. Let's read about St. Gall and his abbey. We kind of read about him a little bit in the beginning. Let's read more about St. Gallen. There has been a monastery of some sort at St. Gallen in eastern Switzerland since the traveling Irish monk Gall built a sleeping cell and a wooden church there in the 7th century. Gall was one of the 12 people who accompanied St. Columban on his mission from Ireland to spread Christianity throughout continental Europe. During the Middle Ages, the town of St. Gallen became an enormously powerful ecclesiastical center. In the 18th century, the monastery and its lands were taken by the French. The monastery became a cathedral in 1847. The St. Gallen Cathedral represents many different eras of architectural history, with 8th century buildings and a collegiate church dating back to the 18th century. The most beautiful room in this complex of buildings is the 18th century Abbey Library, with its elaborate plasterwork and paintings. It contains some very rare manuscripts, including Irish examples dating back to the period between the 7th and 12th centuries. The Abbey precinct of St. Gallen, including the cathedral and the Abbey Library, is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Sorry that someone's like honking outside. I have no idea why. Let's see. It's interesting. A closed site, apparently, in many different languages. Do not ski here. In whatever language you speak, it is closed. Here are the language regions of Switzerland. Isn't that fascinating? So all the pink is German-speaking. All the purple is French. All the green is Italian. And the yellow is Romansh. Very cool. So here's a campaign poster for Yes, sauvegarder l'or et le franc suisse. Initiative sur l'or, oui. Vote yes for gold reserves. And then here it is in German. Let's see. Volksvermögen schützen, Gold Initiative. Ja. How interesting. Let's see. And here's a traffic sign in Romansh. How cool is that? Oh, wow. Some modern art here. Talk about a fork in the road. Have you seen the fork in the lake? A beautiful painting of Lake Geneva. Let's read about some modern art. Paul Klee, belatedly Swiss artist. Perhaps the most famous Swiss artist of all is Paul Klee. He was born to a Swiss mother and a German father, but grew up in Switzerland. Nevertheless, laws at the time determined citizenship according to the nationality of the father, and Klee was considered German, despite being born and raised in Switzerland. He studied art in Munich and later settled in Germany, forming part of the De Blaue Reiter, the Blue Rider group. That association of artists rejected commonly held art standards and traditions, and experimented with new forms of visual expression. He taught at the Bauhaus, a famous German design school. Some of his work is completely abstract, while others combine geometric forms with images of animals and people. Many of his paintings were confiscated by the Nazis and declared degenerate art. How degenerate? In 1932, during the rise of fascism in Germany, Klee returned to Switzerland, where he continued to paint. Klee's work is often whimsical and childlike without being childish, such as his well-known abstract twittering machine. That small watercolor is now at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Some of his work reveals mystical or fantastical qualities. Later in his life, as World War II was breaking out, Klee's work reflected more somber concerns. At that point, he was also dying of a chronic illness, and death and angels became common images in his paintings. Klee applied for Swiss citizenship, but Swiss authorities were in no hurry to claim him as one of their own. They considered his art too revolutionary. Klee died in 1940 at age 60 before his application was processed. Citizenship was granted 6 days after he died in the country of his birth. Today, Klee is recognized as one of the most important artists of the 20th century. Oh my, look at this. Very amazing sculpture there. And this is by Le Corbusier. You can tell right away, one of the most famous architects in the world. Very recognizable buildings. There we go. Some beautiful paper cutting art here. Oh, you can't see. Beautiful paper cutting art. And let's read about what this book has been talking about this whole time. Cuckoo clocks. One of the best known symbols of Switzerland is the folksy cuckoo clock. Typically, the wall-hung mechanical clock features a decorated chalet or mountain house with little doors. When the clock strikes an hour, and often the half and quarter hour as well, the doors open and little figurines appear, sometimes to a music box accompaniment. Edelweiss or Der fröhliche Wanderer, the Happy Wanderer, are popular tunes. Most importantly, out pops a charming carved bird which calls cuckoo, cuckoo. The weight-driven clockworks are often made with weights shaped like pine cones. Curiously, despite being associated with Switzerland, cuckoo clocks originated in neighboring Germany in the Black Forest region in the 18th century. The idea of having a mechanical cuckoo bird announce the time apparently predates the Black Forest clocks, but the region is generally acknowledged as the birthplace of the clocks as we know them. So how did Switzerland get into the act? The addition of the little house, called the chalet style, was a Swiss contribution, added sometime in the 1850s. Today, the Lotscher Company, based near Zurich, is the only company producing authentic Swiss cuckoo clocks. Along with being a popular souvenir of Switzerland and the Black Forest, the cuckoo clock has become a kind of cultural icon. As a symbol of passing time, childhood, innocence, and even suspense and foreboding, the clock plays a role in many of the arts. Cuckoo clocks are featured in a surprising number of stories, poems, musical compositions and songs, movies, animation, and TV shows. And yodeling, an Alpine tradition. Yodeling, a form of singing which involves rapid changes of pitch between high and low, is one of those iconic things that people associate with Switzerland. Of course, all Swiss do not yodel, but the technique is most likely originated there, in the Central Alps. Goat or sheep herders in the mountains probably used the distinctive call yodele-ee-oo to call their herds. Yodeling became an important feature of folk music in Switzerland, Austria, and southern Germany. Yodeling figures in other kinds and nationalities of music. For example, it's an important feature of American cowboy country music. But the Swiss style is distinctive to the Alpine regions. Today, the Swiss hold yodeling festivals, which often include other forms of folk music and instruments. A storm is starting to blow in. It's expected to snow in about an hour. I'm so excited. So you can tell that it's coming when you hear the neighbor's wind chime outside. So you might hear that, or the upstairs neighbor sneezing. That as well. Let's read about Heidi, the girl from the Alps. Canada has Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables. England has Mary Lennox from The Secret Garden. Sweden has Pippi Longstocking. America has Little Orphan Annie. And Switzerland has Heidi. These beloved stories about good-hearted orphan girls have been passed from generation to generation. Heidi, written in 1880 by the Swiss author Johanna Spiri, is the oldest of these. There's a little note here saying that Pippi Stocking's not technically an orphan, but she lives without her parents. In the story, young orphaned Heidi is sent to live with her grandfather in the Swiss Alps. He's a bitter old man who lives in seclusion on a mountainside. Cheerful Heidi makes friends with Peter, a young goatherd, and other mountain residents, and eventually wins over her stern grandfather. A few years later, Heidi is sent to work in the city as a hired companion to a wealthy invalid girl named Clara. Although Heidi and Clara become friends, city life in this strict household proves to be unhealthy for the girl. For the girl, she longs for her mountain home. For the girl, maybe who longs for her mountain home. In the end, healthy alpine air and fresh goat milk restore health and happiness to not only Heidi, but the chronically ill Clara as well. Heidi is one of the best-known works of Swiss literature and has spawned many film, television, and theater adaptations. One of the earliest of the movies, in 1937, starred American child star Shirley Temple in the title role. Switzerland even has a theme park named Heidiland, which is a favorite tourist attraction, particularly with Japanese and Korean visitors. They really didn't do their spell check well, this page, did they? But I understood what they're trying to say. Talking about Heidi. Oh my, having a lovely camping trip with the Matterhorn in the background. That's so lovely. They're about to go skiing down the mountain. They look excited about it. And there's some old-fashioned sleds there. Pretty cool. And they're playing curling. I thought that was kind of a more Canadian thing, but apparently they play it all over. And they're having a wrestling match. Looks like they have to wear special pants that they grab. Oh, wow. Yeah, a music festival. It says they're watching The Cure. That's awesome. Oh, wow. Jump square. This is an evil spirit. That's all that it says. Oh, wow. Look at this kind of race. It's ski-oring? Ski-oring? I'm not sure, but that looks pretty exciting and scary at the same time. Here's a old festival here. They all dress up in some cool masks and costumes. And enjoying a bike ride in the rain in their fancy clothes. The annual spring parade of guilds in Zurich. Oh, that's pretty cool. And this is my favorite Swiss tradition, when they decorate the cows with all the flowers and parade them around in the summer. That's the best. It's so pretty. The cows are so sweet. And here is, let's see, this is Klausjagen. And these are headdresses. I thought they were signs. These are big hats that light up. That's wild. Let's read about Sammy Klaus and Schmutzli. Delivering Christmas gifts to the good children of the world must be a difficult job, because Santa doesn't work alone. In the United States, he has elves to help him out, but in Europe, Santa's assistants appear in a number of guises. First off, the European Saint Nick is more of a Father Christmas figure than an American-style Santa Claus. He wears the bishop's robes of his 4th century Saint Nicholas forebear and can be more solemn. In the German part of Switzerland, Saint Nick, or Sammy Klaus, is accompanied by a strange-looking figure called Schmutzli, from Schmutz, which means dirt. He is a frightening character with a concealed or blacked-out face and red eyes. In the French part of Switzerland, his attendant is called Père Foutard, or Father Foutard, from the French fouet, or whip. Sure enough, like Schmutzli, he often carries a stick or switches with which he threatens children against misbehavior. This scary Christmas figure has numerous counterparts in other European countries, all with slightly different characteristics. He goes by the name of Zwarte Piet, or Black Peter in Holland, Hans Trapp in the Alsace-Lorraine section of France, the Krampus, or Christmas Devil in Austria, Bavaria, and Slovenia. The character has other incarnations as well. These days, Schmutzli and his cousins are fairly benign figures who look scary but don't really hurt anyone. In the old days, however, they were much more likely to put their switches to use on any child they deemed to be naughty. And here's a tradition which has kind of come to America. They do it in the Thanksgiving parade, the human Christmas tree that sings. Pretty cool. Oh, look how charming. Onion dolls. That's adorable. And cheese. I love cheese. Oh boy. So, meats and gherkins. That's a combination. And of course, the chocolate. Let's read about it. A nation of chocolate lovers. Although cocoa beans don't grow in Switzerland, the Swiss have played a major role in the development of chocolate. Today, the country is a top producer with a reputation for the highest quality chocolate. Many well-known brands are native to Switzerland, including Lindt, Nestle, and Toblerone. In 1819, François-Louis Caillet opened the first chocolate factory in Switzerland after studying chocolate making in Italy. He developed a way to turn gritty chocolate into a smooth product that could be made into bars. But chocolate at this point was still mainly used in drinks. In 1879, Swiss chocolate maker Rudolf Lindt improved upon the process by adding cocoa butter and inventing a rolling and stirring machine called a conche. This advancement greatly improved the taste, texture, and melting quality of chocolate. That same year, Lindt's countryman, Daniel Peter, came up with the idea of adding powdered milk to chocolate to create milk chocolate. Henri Nestle, another Swiss, began by manufacturing milk products. He worked so closely with Daniel Peter, it's probably Daniel Petit, however, that he eventually went into the chocolate business. Other Swiss folks who played important roles in the history of chocolate making include Philippe Suchard, Jacques Fouquier, Charles-Amédée Kohler, Rodolphe Sprungli-Amann, and Jean Tobler, who created the Toblerone bar in the late 1860s. I read somewhere that the Toblerone is supposed to look like the Alps. That's why it's bumpy. In 2014, the Swiss ate more than 19 pounds of chocolate per person, making Switzerland the top chocolate-consuming nation in the world. For comparison, Americans that same year ate about 9.7 pounds per person. Ooh, and muesli, I believe it's pronounced muesli, the original Swiss granola. At least that's how I've heard it said in the United States. So it's probably not how you say it in Switzerland, but anyway. In 1990, a Swiss physician created a dish for the patients in his clinic in Zurich. Dr. Maximilian Birchebenner believed in a diet rich in fresh fruits, nuts, and raw vegetables. His approach to nutrition was quite at odds with the thinking of the day, which emphasized meat and bread. Birchebenner also stressed strict physical exercise and an early-to-bed, early-to-rise daily schedule. He based his theories on the lifestyle of shepherds in the Swiss Alps. The dish he is famous for became known as muesli in Switzerland, where it's still very popular. It's called Birchermuesli. Birchermuesli. The doctor's original recipe was a combination of uncooked rolled oats, grated apple, chopped hazelnuts or almonds, soaked in a little cream and lemon juice, and eaten with plain yogurt. Today, packaged muesli can be easily found in the cereal aisle of most grocery stores. It may contain other rolled grains such as wheat, rye, or cornflakes, along with dried fruits, nuts, and seeds. Some versions are sweetened with honey and spiced with cinnamon. The difference between muesli and granola, which is a similar cereal dish, is that the oats and other grains are raw in muesli. In granola, they're baked until crispy. Very, revolutionary for its time in terms of diet and exercise and all that. This looks amazing. It's called a Gugelhupf. That looks so delicious. Lots of delicious cheese. Yum yum. And then, of course, you turn that into creamy, warm fondue. And some very purple wine here from these very purple grapes. And we've got a butcher here selling some meats. Lastly, there's some recipes. We've got Swiss toast and Swiss mac and cheese. I'm trying to talk my sister into us making an ASMR cooking video with this recipe. So maybe in a few weeks. We'll see. I need to go out and buy the ingredients. But anyway, that's going to be it for tonight. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good night.